Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of the Wheel of Time, Blood Calls Blood. And I really enjoyed this episode. Now granted, we do have a time skip of about a month, but honestly, you kind of needed to do that to get everybody not back together all at once, but at least in the same kind of place. So let's kind of hit off the first bit. So, funerals and death take a lot of precedence in this episode, showcasing funeral rites and everything like that. And that is an important bit that I'm glad that they kind of focused in on, because death and rebirth, that cycle is an important part of the Wheel of Time, and we do see a lot of that stuff here, mainly because of uh, if you've read the books and everything, you see a lot of kind of cool stuff that kind of weaves throughout here. With, okay, we see funeral rites. Now, granted, that isn't as much in the book, but like, we see how death is processed in this world, and then we also see things that are hinting to like rebirths and all that are vastly tied with other characters. So I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. But we get in the beginning and we see that Karine and the rest of even like the followers of Logain are buried, and this isn't the only funeral kind of rite that we see here. We see her buried. We see Stepan, her warder, really broken up about it, and it's really effective when they pull back. Now, granted, I think they're getting a little bit too much with the pull back in the top-down views. Not to say that I don't like those views, but that's becoming a really prevalent kind of thing. I'm like, okay, cool, don't overdo it. It's cool to see kind of like symbols and all that, and also like battle scenes like we saw in episode 4, and seeing that kind of progression. I'm just worried that they don't get a little bit too like, we're just gonna keep fucking spamming the shit out of this. I'm like, use it when it's effective, and then kind of go for everything. But this was effective here to see all the different kind of graves and everything as they're laying cloths on the bodies and everything and burying them. Not very deeply, mind you. But then we see that they're pretty much heading to Tar-Valon. Moiraine and Lan are talking about it. He's like, hey, isn't it good to almost be home? And she's like, saddle, these boots, this is home. And that's an effective character kind of moment, because we gradually see that Moiraine and Lan, them on the road pretty much is home, and we see that as they get to Tar-Valon and the machinations that they got to deal with, because God, the different kind of shit that they're gonna have to deal with is just gonna be like nutty as shit. You're like, motherfucker. So we see that they pretty much did the burial, and then it like kind of jumps forward like the month as they're doing their kind of stuff. Now it's kind of a little bit weird. They kind of get, every kind of group kind of gets to Tar-Valon at the same time, and we kind of shift around to different kind of things. So how do I want to do this? Because each one has its own different kind of chunk that they kind of get into, and we get a lot of development. So even though I don't like that we are only given 8 episodes, they at least move shit at a pretty good clip to where we're like, okay, cool, at least we're getting these things out of the way so that way we can hopefully set up and hopefully do longer seasons or whatnot. Now, granted, I don't need like excessive seasons, you know what I mean? But I do like that we're getting into the meatier kind of plot points here. How do we want to do this? Because we have Moiraine and Lan's kind of stuff, which is tied with Nynaeve's stuff, because they were talking about how Nynaeve would be a pretty big kind of thing in Tar-Valon because of her power and her healing and all that, and how all the different Ajahs are going to fight the fuck over her, because it's like, the more people you have in your Ajah, the more kind of political clout and everything you can have, and you can try and do some stuff, try and get like an Amyrlin seat to do shit for you, or get to where you could elevate one of your Ajah to the Amyrlin seat. It gets all kind of fucked up, crazy ass shit, but that's an important bit. We got that kind of shit going on. We've got Egwene and Perrin, and we got Mat and Rand, and a little bit of other characters that pop in as well. Who do I want to go for first? let us actually deal with Egwene and Perrin. So they're pretty much near Tar Valon. We get their month kind of thing. They're chilling, they're vibing with the Tinkers and everything like that. And then we see Valda, and the questioner's popping up like, "Hey guys, what are you doing here?" And then he sees them and is just immediately like, "Seize them!" It's like, why? Yes, you remember their faces, but why in the ever-loving fuck you're like, "I want them"? It's like, why? The fuck did they do? It's not like they did like anything. It's not like Perrin was like sharpening an axe crazily like a couple episodes ago where the dude's like, eh. And it wasn't like Egwene was like going, I can channel everything, everything. You know what I mean? Like, he jumped to like, I'm going. Now, granted, if they're pretty much going on his overzealousness of like literal witch hunts and shit on people, I kind of get that. We just needed a little bit more of him being like, hey, so there's all with these people. But we didn't get enough of that. So this then propels us into their portion of the story as they're trying to run. Aram is trying to help him, but he gets fucking tonked out and they get captured. He, for some reason, thinks that Egwene can channel. I don't know why he would think that. Like, granted, we know that Egwene can channel and she has those kind of tendencies and everything like that. He's like, alright, I just want to see if you can channel and everything because I think that their shit is against nature. And I'm like, nature allows them to channel. Now, granted, I understand that when you get into zealotry like this, logic means fucking nothing to a certain thing. I'm like, but then how do they get it? Like, you're not even explaining how they would get it and what they would do with it. But he has her tied down. He's like, yeah, I didn't know if you could channel, so I didn't cut your hands off yet. And I'm like, it's probably following along the principles of certain kind of things. Like, in certain kind of magic systems, like Harry Potter or whatnot, you use the wand and you verbalize it when you're younger, but then when you're older, to make sure that you can effectively fight someone, you're able to do it without even verbalizing it. Whereas in here, he's really just fallen into the form that he has seen mostly with channeling and seeing them actually do this stuff with the weaves. And the thing is, when you get to like even some kind of higher tier shit, as we essentially evolve into like Dragon Ball levels of awesomeness, and yes, I'm using that as a good comparison because it gets fucking crazy. Good luck trying to stop that shit beforehand, cause, yeah, that doesn't stop certain characters later on in the series that have lost other kinds of things. I'm not talking about a penis. No. Or any kind of, like, genitals or whatnot. But, like, certain kind of things pop up into play and you're like, huh, okay, we'll have to see how that kind of goes. And you're like, hey, guess what, motherfucker? Ha-ha! And it's like, alright, yeah, you don't need your hands for that shit. So, I'm like, yeah, he's essentially being cruel and trying to rationalize his cruelness of being like, oh, it'll stop him from weaving. Then he's like, I'm going to try and pretty much force you to channel by, killing Perrin. Why? Like, well, you'll either channel to save him, or he'll die. And I'm like, you're just murdering someone. It's really effective in showing how just warped and fucked up this guy is, but it shows complete flaws in his logic of, like, it almost reminds me of Monty Python of, she's a witch! She turned me into a newt. I got better. Like, that level of fucking insanity. And it still works because the content works well enough of, like, he believes it, no ifs, ands, buts, or nuts. Egwene is like, I need to figure out how to get out of this. And Perrin is... We get a lot of kind of character development because he's getting cut. We see his eyes doing the wolf kind of thing. And I wondered how they were going to kind of do that. Now, granted, it has been a little bit since I've read, like, the earlier parts of the Wheel of Time book. But I'm like, I don't remember it kind of going like this, being his impetus for his, like, wolf connection. But since we do have less time and less runway, I understand expediting certain things. So, okay, cool. And then he's like, you know what? I'll let you kind of figure this out. You'll either channel and save his ass, and then I kill you, and he's free to go, or I kill him, and you don't channel, and you're not an Aes Sedai, so you're free to go. Then they start talking, and Egwene's like, all right, I'll figure this out. We can get out of this thing, no worries. And Perrin's like, I deserved this. I killed her. And he explains to her what happened with his wife, and she's like, no, like, she does try and help him. Like, listen, it's not something easy to deal with, but you're gonna deal with this, man. You're gonna live, and you'll get through this, man. This doesn't make up for that, man. Like, she's understanding that it was the heat of the battle. Things were confusing. You don't have all the information, and an accident occurred. That's what it was. Like, intent matters within the context of this. And Perrin thinks he murdered his wife. And he really didn't. He accidentally killed her. There is a difference. His intent was not to kill her. His intent was to take out enemy threats, and he crossed wires and that. He did not intend to kill his wife. And he just, in his grief and in understanding what he has done, he's kind of worked that. And seeing Egwene, like, try and help him through that, even though it's a little bit, it's like, yeah, no. Like, it's really good to see her be able to do that. It really helps kind of develop her character and her relationship with Perrin, which is kind of nice to kind of see like this. Well, Vala comes in, Dick Swaggering, like, alright, let's kind of see this. Starts cutting in. She's fucking starts actually doing her kind of shit, and she just poofs a little fireball out and it doesn't like, well, that was kind of fucking weak. But we see that Egwene's like, alright, cool, and she's able to burn the restraints on Perrin, and he kind of starts knocking around a little bit, but Egwene is able to get a knife as well and stab the dude non-fatally, because he does feature prominence going on. And we hear that wolves have been going fucking buck wild because they sense one of their kindred spirits is in danger. They get out of the tent. These wolves are fucking shit up. Like, alright, you know what you kind of wanted from Game of Thrones with the dire wolves kind of fucking taking some motherfuckers out? That's what you get here with just wolves. And they wreck some shit. Like, a dude is like, what the fuck's going on? And it's like, fuck, man, that kind of works. And they meet a wolf on the way out, and Perrin's like, no, they're not after us. We good. And the wolf, now granted, the wolf doesn't go like, and give that, like, that nod, but it's the essential wolf equivalent to be like, alright, cool, you go. And of course, they kind of go off to get out of Dodge and everything, and that's kind of where we're at with them. I think they might have gotten into Tar Valon, but they kind of, like, peter out as it goes. That's the kind of main development that we get from them in this episode. What the ever loving? Alright, let's see. Let us save Moiraine and Egwene's... No, we need to do that stuff first and then shift over to Rand's. Correct! So, they pretty much came into Tar Valon, and Moraine's plan is to pretty much have Nynaeve sequestered to pretty much keep her from being used as a pawn in all the other ones, and to keep her as safe as possible until she can kind of figure out the situation in the White Tower, because she has been gone for a while, and she needs to kind of ascertain what's the beefs around everywhere and what's going on. So Nynaeve is kind of pissed off, like, yeah, will you even tell me if you find my friends and shit like that? She's understandably wary of the Aes Sedai and doesn't want to get involved in petty bullshit. But granted, whenever you're trying to save the world and save your friends, the pettiest of bullshit is what usually fucks you over. And she's like, yes, I'll keep you praised, and I'll tell you about your friends. That's fine. Why is that important? Because Nynaeve will get, like, spun into stuff later on. We also get that Stepin takes his Aes Sedai's ring that he had taken in the beginning of the episode and takes it to a ceremonial place where it is melted down. It looks like a place that it's like the Flame of Tar Valon, symbolic kind of stuff, as it's got this ring of kind of gold around that. It looks like it follows the whole kind of motif of the show of death and rebirth. where we see a ring of the Aes Sedai is melted down back into gold, and I would assume, that's just me assuming at this point, that it is also where rings of the newly made Aes Sedai are forged. Like, you take the gold out from there and do it. It's important to bring it back and reuse. It's very much within that cycle kind of style and everything, and to keep it kind of going. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. At least that's what I got out of it. If I sound like a crazy ass motherfucker, let me know. But he's still not doing well from the death of his Aes Sedai. We see that it affects people vastly. And, of course, we get other kind of things going on. We see that, let's see, who do we want to go with first? Well, in regards to the Stefan situation, we see that Moiraine talks with Alanna, talking about potentially having him bonded to her to kind of, like, help him out of it, because it is... Moiraine was thinking about, like, giving up her bond with Lan, but this kind of cements the kind of damage that the bond can do if death and everything like that occurs with a warder, and that doing that is not a decision to do lightly. Now, however, there are things within the book that, like, occurred that make a kind of, like, special case kind of scenarios going on. But it's really kind of cool because we see Moiraine and Alanna having this discussion in Moraine's bedroom. However, it's very Spartan, and a funny kind of thing is they're having this on her bed. And I saw some stuff going on with, like, this whole kind of thing. Alanna has no shoes on, but Moraine's got her boots on the bed. Because, again, she said that the boots are her home. It's kind of funny because you're like, don't put your boots on the bed, but the thing is, she doesn't see it as her bed. She doesn't see it as home. She doesn't see it as that comfortable place. Her walking, moving, doing all the things that she does as an Aes Sedai, that is where she's comfortable at. That is where she's doing it. And the thing is, Alanna is also telling her about how Liandrin, the Red Aja Aes Sedai that we've been following around, is gaining more and more support and political clout, and is potentially becoming kind of a dangerous kind of counterbalance to the Emerald seat, Siuan Sanchi, as she is coming to deal with the whole Logain scenario, and also to figure out what's going on with Moiraine. Now, granted, in the show, we do not know the complete connection between Moiraine and Siuan Sanchi, but they are connected in what's kind of going on, because they did grow up as novices together, and they do know things about, like, the prophecy that Moiraine is trying to track down and figure out with the Dragon Reborn. However, you always know that when you're in a position of power and you're doing all different kinds of things, you have to present so many different faces to so many different people. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out, because Alanna is pretty much assured in her view that Siuan will be like, Sanchi will probably call Moiraine to task. And the thing is, she's like, just watch out. You need to spend more time here to understand what's kind of going on, because you're in a crazy-ass place. And then we see that Moiraine looks at this kind of painting. Now, granted, I don't remember the significance of this. So, if anybody can refresh me or want to, like, bring the significance up, thank you. But we'll have to kind of see how that kind of plays out. So that's not the complete, let's see. So we shift over. Nynaeve is disregarding the orders and just kind of walking around. Near the place, we see this thing that shows off the importance of the warders guarding the Aes Sedai. Nynaeve is, like, kind of looking around. It kind of leads to the chamber of the general meeting place, I think, of, like, the Emerald seat and the other kind of heads of the Ajas. And Liandrin pops up trying to see what's kind of going on with Nynaeve, like, trying to make small talk, talking about how, yes, even though the Aes Sedai are a woman order, they still have to deal with the power of men in other different areas and all that, and talking about warders and all that, and how the Red Aja doesn't have those. And she's like, oh, you can walk around, you can go through the library to get to a garden and everything. Liandrin definitely trying to play happy maker in the Aes Sedai, trying to win Nynaeve to her side, but she is not, for all of her kind of political machinations, she does not read Nynaeve very well. Granted, I think that Moiraine pretty much gets and understands Nynaeve's complete opposition to the Aes Sedai at this point, and knows kind of how to talk to her, Liandrin thinks that, like, as being as nice and cordial as possible will get her to her side, even though it's kind of having the opposite effect. She's like, alright, fine, whatever. Okay, this is where we kind of pause here at the moment. So, let's shift over to what we see with Rand and Mat. So, we see them walking in pretty much what looks like to be a refugee slash maybe merchant caravan. I say refugee because this is still the aftermath of Loghain's attempt of raising his army for the Dragon Reborn kind of thing. So I would assume this is like people that have dealt with the whole war-torn stuff and everything, seen, of course, Tar Valon and everything. Which, by the way, they do a very, very good job with Tar Valon. It looks kind of like out of just a great kind of fantasy thing, like Lord of the Rings. It's on tier with that, and I'm like, wow, actually looks pretty cool. And you see that it's not just the White City. There's also greenery around it as well. So it's like, okay, that's pretty cool that they're able to do the whole stuff with the city, as well as keeping nature in play as well. Well, as we see them going around, Mat has become very short-tempered. We see some kids fucking around, but they're not being on the level of annoying where you think they're going to bust through a fucking wall. You know what I mean? Just like, sugar! No, not on that. They're just being usual kind of like kid energy level, and Mat just snapping at him. He's like, hey, man, Rand is like, you doing all right? Just talk to me, I'll help. And we get a really kind of cool bit as we see them kind of walking, and they see this mountain in the distance near Tar Valon. He's like, why do I feel like I've seen that mountain before and whatnot? And this is an important bit. So we're getting into kind of lore kind of and other kind of spoilery territory that will link out. Now, granted, that's it. They continue on with the same kind of path, maybe changing some things up. But this is Dragon Mountain. This is an important bit because Lews Therin Telamon, the original dragon, after his fit of madness and breaking of the world, he was healed and understood the amount of damage he did, and decided to draw into him all the one power and kill himself. And that created Dragon Mountain. Why is this important? Because of, if this follows the same kind of rationale, Rand being the Dragon Reborn, that is a deep connection for him. However, there's also the other deep connection that Rand was born there as well, with the whole Aiel and the war that they had precipitated, and he was born on that mountain. So we'll kind of have to see. It does have various significance, and it's cool to see how that kind of works out. And we do get sprinklings of more bits leading us to that kind of conclusion, and also strengthening ties to what we've seen in the book as well. So, yeah, I know. It gets kind of crazy. So they kind of get in. They're trying to see what's going on. Ran by some random food. Like, hey, this is actually tasty. You want some, man? It's like, nah. He's just kind of like fucked up because the dagger and the evil from Shadar Logoth is fucking with him. Now, granted, Rand is taking this more that he can channel and everything, and he's going to need help looking around, trying to figure out what's going on, and they're able to find a place that had connection to Tom, and they're able to pretty much get a room for a night. And he's like, wow, just bringing up the economies of what the Winespring Inn had in Emond's Field and the Two Rivers versus what it does it costs in a big city. And it's kind of cool to see him like commenting on the economies of that. Now, granted, I was a business major. I have a business degree. I kind of geek out on that stuff. Now, granted, it's not deep, but I'm just like, hey, I kind of like them. Like, I don't need to have in-depth talks about, like, how these people do taxes and shit. However, if it's important to the story, and, like, if some dude's holding out because you taxed my cabbages too damn high, and it's like the Dragon Reborn needs that motherfucker and his cabbages to beat the Dark One, then that's kind of funny, but also kind of interesting, because that would be the fucking roadblock that actually would, like, kick someone's ass. Can we defeat the Dark One? Sure, if Cabbage Guy doesn't fuck us over. Shit. Story done. Age concluded. Oof. Must respin. Damn it. So, we see that Mat is dealing with shit. We see Rand is like, alright, cool. Chill, my dude, chill. goes up to the library, and we get introduced to Loyal. Loyal. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he is an Ogier, and I'm glad that they kind of do that. He's like, I did not know what to expect and how they were going to show an Ogier. Orgier? Ogier. Because he made Ogier. Because Rand called him an ogre, but he's like, no, an Ogier. With the setting and everything. But I'm like, hey, that actually looks pretty good. Like, I didn't have a problem with it whatsoever. And I like how he's going in depth because they're very kind of ponderous, not slow. They're not slow-witted. It's just slow to get through all the... Oh, yes, going into Jane Farstrider and everything like that. Those kind of things because Egwene was into that and was an important hero and everything. And he's bringing up Rand's kind of heritage. He's like, oh, are you an Aiel man? It's like, no, I'm from the Two Rivers. Oh, an Aiel man from the Two Rivers. It's like, I'm not an Aiel man from the Two Rivers. Okay, Randu is not an Aiel man from the Two Rivers because of his hair. It's like, all right, bringing that in. And someone actually commenting on that. It's like, okay, cool. And they see, of course, that Leandrin and Alana are bringing in Logain and the whole kind of thing. He's like, hey, I got to go check with my friend and see what's going on so we can see this and everything. He's like, all right, I'll see you guys after I, get all my shit and everything. But I liked kind of Loyal's character because he's very academic, talking about all this kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you and everything because he popped up out of nowhere and Rand's like, fucking shit! And then he's like, oh, okay, sorry about that. You just scared the shit out of me. And then put his sword away and all that. And I'm like, ooh, I really want to see this friendship and how this kind of works out. So they're seeing everything going on. Matt pretty much has a perch and everything. They see Logain being brought in, food thrown at him and everything. He then looks up to them. He starts laughing at them. And I don't know if it was in Matt's head or if he was actually doing it because it switches back and Logain's like, price of being gentle. And then Matt's like, listen, I don't want that to happen to us. We'll deal with it if we go that kind of nuts. And he's like, yeah, of course. Rand's like, yeah, I promise you do that for me too. And it's important because the main reason in the books why things work out as well as they do is because even though these friends go through a lot of different things together, they do help each other. And even though they have to deal with certain things on their own, when they come together, they know that they're better together and helping and doing all these kinds of things. And it's kind of cool to see that kind of reaffirmed. Well, this kind of works out to the effect that we see that Nynaeve's pretty much trying to go around and bumps into Loyal, and we see that Matt's kind of in his kind of funk and everything, and she's happy to see Rand and him, and he wants to know if she can do anything for him. And she's like, no, not at this moment. And Laurel's like, all right, cool, whatever. And we then have them talking, and Matt's like, not Matt, Rand's like, listen, Nynaeve, I don't want them to screw with him because he's pretty upset that he's probably channeling or whatnot. And Nynaeve's like, listen, we're Two Rivers. We got this. I'm not letting any of that shit happen. I'm not gonna let him fuck with you. And it's really kind of cool, and I really kind of like that because Nynaeve, if not done well enough, can come off as an annoying asshole. But the thing is the balance of finding it when she's an annoying asshole and who she's an annoying asshole to. If it's somebody being a dick and just being an asshole to people, or I don't know, trying to fucking kill her ass, she gonna whoop it, and you can see that. Here, you see that kind of strength that she's got of listen, we got this, I'm not gonna let that shit happen to you guys. Because it really kind of hit, because I'm like, damn, granted, I didn't hate her in the books, I liked certain things that she did, and certain things I'm like, what the fuck? But I kind of felt for her here, because she's the kind of oldest out of the group, and she thinks of it as her job to help them and protect them. And as an older brother, I really connected with her on that. I'm like, wow, good. And she's trying her best. She understands that everybody's gone through some fucking crazy ass shit, and that they're just gonna try and make this work and do what they can. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So she doesn't bring that up to Moiraine that I know of, but it's Moiraine. She's at the Blue Aja. She probably fucking knows what's going on at that point. But trying to figure out, okay, I want them to focus on her at the moment, not the rest of the shit, because she needs to figure out what to do and who's the Dragon Reborn and all that kind of shit. Well, we also see that she gets back to the tower. Well, I don't know if this was back at the tower after this fact or before this, but she was in her room, and Stepan comes in and is like, hey, do you have any more of that tea? I've been having trouble sleeping lately. And he's wondering if the pain will ever any better, and she's like, nah, really won't. Like, with any kind of loss, it does somewhat gradually get better over time, but it never really goes away, you know? And the thing is, Stepan, you can really see, can't really accept that the pain's just kind of eating at him. And we see that Lan and the rest are trying to help him and hang out with him, and we see Lan drinking with him in his room, and then he starts to feel weird and go to sleep. And then he wakes up and he doesn't see Stepan anywhere. And we see that because he was talking to him about like joining with Alana and having the bond and everything like that, and trying to work out the whole kind of relationship that we go on there. And like, yeah, I've never been with two men before or whatnot. And like, yeah, because he brought up the stuff that he had done with his father, how Karine had saved him, because he was an asshole and he didn't feel like he deserved to be her warder, but over time he like devoted himself to her as what had saved him, because he used to pick on people that were weaker than him and then people who were the same kind of level, and he tried to fucking fight her in a bar. It was really kind of cool to understand. And even though we only got not a lot of time with this character, it's an effective and moving kind of portrayal, because it gets the understanding of how relationships are formed between the Aes Sedai and their warders, and what it kind of means. And even though we get that Lan's woken up, he goes to the hall where the warders are, and we see that Stepan has killed himself. And it sucks. He got one of the daggers, and he didn't do it in a way that would be fast. He did it with his stomach and everything, similar to seppuku. And it just sucks. You're like, God damn it. And Lan tried to help his friend, and he couldn't. Feel that. Yeah. And we get to the end, and we see that they do a funeral for him. And this was kind of interesting. Now, granted, funerals are different in, like, USA. And we see that, like, he is tasked as being, like, the primary mourner, mourning the loss of Stepan, as we see everybody else arraigned. We see Nynaeve is there as well as Moiraine and Alana, as they're, like, beating their chests and with, like, one fist, and as Lan cries and screams out for Stepan, and is essentially the voice for the rest of the warders and the rest of the Aes Sedai around to mourn Stepan properly. And it was very interesting. Even though that's not how I would mourn, it's interesting to see how these characters mourn and how it affects Moiraine as she understands truly the consequences. Now, granted, she probably understands that before, but seeing how Lan reacts to this, how Stepan reacted to losing his Aes Sedai, what that bond really kind of means, and how, even though she's tactically thinking of, like, handing off Lan's bond, what that would actually mean and what that could actually do. And we see that Nynaeve is vastly affected by it as well. We see Moiraine crying. Everybody's very sad because this was their friend. Even though Nynaeve was newer to being Stepan's friend, it is a very sad way to go. And it's interesting that they still outpour this grief, even though they have this kind of cycle of death and rebirth. They have this reincarnation thing. Because depending upon what kind of religious beliefs you have and everything, suicide is viewed very differently. And seeing how they kind of reacted to this was interesting and telling of the characters and the culture and how they view life and death. So that's really kind of cool to see and understand, even though it's a not not a big thing of the plot with this character and this storyline behind it. It shows a vaster kind of connection to what death means to all of these other characters as well. It's like a ripple in a pond. We see this almost inconsequential thing to the overall plot draw, but then we see how it affects Lan, who's a very important character, Moraine, Nynaeve, and even the other characters that are supporting and around as they kind of deal with this, because we're going to be dealing with a lot of life and death and everything going on in this show. And it's crazy, because normally I'd be like, okay, mainly just have good things for the story and everything, but when make sure that the plot and the characters are worked out very well. This is a very good kind of character thing that does multiple kind of characters at once to show us all these different kind of things, and it's very well worked in my opinion. Even though it seems like it wouldn't matter much, it kind of does, even because it doesn't matter much. It's really kind of weird trying to talk through it. It just was really affecting to me. I was not expecting it, and am glad that they were able to do it and effectively execute it as well as they did. So that kind of like brings us to all the stories kind of culminating. We'll have to see kind of what goes on. Mat is a very kind of case that needs to be dealt with as quickly as fucking possible, and we're kind of gonna get to know. We've only got 3 episodes left now, so everything's gonna kind of even get more amped up and more amped up, because things are going to happen a little bit quicker maybe, and we'll have to see what other kind of things that they kind of put in as well. So I'm really excited to see where the next episodes go and where this season kind of ends. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.